So here's an interesting story I wanted to share. This is from my teacher, one of my teachers. I'm not studying with him right now, but he had a huge impact on my life, an Indian guru. And I spent time in India at his ashram, and we did programs in different parts of the world. And he really was able to illustrate directly, through his energy, the potential that we have as human beings. Like we were able to experience directly different flavors in the positive realm of consciousness. So inside of consciousness, he showed us all these different little positive nooks and crannies that we could hang out with. And this was all just from talking. We didn't, there were no drugs involved, just to bracket that. It was a purely direct transmission of his understandings of life. And, all of the spiritual teachers say that we're all one. But he laid it out in very clear terms as to how. So I'm going to just share what he taught me about that. And I can't say that I totally see that, but let's just say I have more and more experiences that demonstrate. And if I look back at my life, I think there's a lot of evidence that what he's saying is accurate, a good paradigm, a useful paradigm for understanding what the hell is going on this planet. So what he said is that imagine a tree, and a tree, if you look at a tree, you can see that the limbs are all connected to the root, like it's one organism. So we as human beings, we can see that no problem. But when we look at ourselves as human beings, it's hard to imagine that we're one organism because we each walk around independently. We don't have any, physical structures connecting ourselves to other human beings. So it doesn't really make sense. And what he said was, imagine that you could take a horizontal cross section across the limbs. Don't do it with a chainsaw, just use your imagination. And so now we're looking at that cross section in the two-dimensional world in a flat plane. Without perceiving the tree, we would see a bunch of different circles that appear separated from each other on a sheet of paper, for example. But we know now as human beings that those cross-sectional circles are indeed connected through the limbs and the trunk into one entity, one being. And what he said is the connection with human beings is not physical, like limbs and trunks and roots, but it's energetic, it's etheric. So we have a spiritual connection. And he said in his life, whenever he needed anything, he just kind of gave sent it out to the to the universe, to the ether. He sent it out into that connected web of humanity. He sent it along the energy channels, and the stuff would show up. And the more I do the kind of things that I'm teaching you, the more that happens for me. Normally, it's kind of little things, but little things are real, and it's good to notice how amazing these little things are. Like I was riding my bicycle across the United States. I rode for a month, and it just wasn't working. It was just getting too hot, and I had too many different problems with my body, and so I decided it was time to end the ride. And I left where I was living on the bike, so I had no other possessions really except what was on the bike with me. And I just had this thought. It's like, what am I going to do? I need it. Am I going to just give the bike away? What to do? What should I do? And literally by the end of the day, I had made a friend in an online group who lived in the city I was going to. He said, I'll keep your bike. And he did for 2 years. So that happened instantly, really just within a day of the thought that I need a solution. And how do we explain that? And he was such a great guy. He was like a really good guy. His name is Barry. Barry, if you see this, thank you for being such an honorable and giving and loving human being. So how did that happen? You know, was it just a coincidence? I think that when you try to demote everything to coincidence, you're missing out on the real opportunity of the experience of being alive on this world. So that's why there was a spiritual connection to a very material problem. And I just never really, the idea that material is somehow lower than the spiritual, I think it's a pitfall. And if this resonates with you, then thank you very much. And a lot of everything else that I'll be saying in all of my videos will make a lot of sense to you. I mean, I've used this thinking so much for health as well. And I'm not going to elaborate too much, but, through all this kind of work, I've gotten pretty good at handling my emotions, which were a big problem in my life. Now they're kind of simple, but now to working on healing actual pains and problems in the body, they seem more dense. I think that's really the point. And, the material world seems more dense. And because of that, we don't believe that we have much spiritual leverage, much spiritual, ability in that realm. So for me, it's an ongoing exploration. Like, I'm not levitating rocks or anything, as far as I know. And I'm not even really trying to do that, but I am trying to create a life that I love. And so what I've said in this video is really a big part. Like, I only teach what I do. This is how I think. This is what I'm doing. And I hope you'll join me.